Hey, this video is an introduction to the Tic Tac Toe assignment that tries to emphasize a couple concepts or at least allow you to work with two-dimensional arrays in kind of more realistic context. So this video will just be an overview of the classes. So there's two classes, a runner class. If you open up the Tic Tac Toe program in source under the package called main, there are two classes and an example of what the game should look like when it's complete. So if we go to the example, this is the text that it should produce. Welcome to Tic Tac Toe. It should gather the players' names, which it already does. And then it displays the board, which it already does. And it takes in moves, which it already does. The part that it doesn't do is check for wins. And so your job is going to be to check for vertical, horizontal, so vertical up and down, horizontal side to side, and diagonal kitty corner obviously wins in the game, and the runner class handles the sort of basic flow of the game, which is often the case. It's a fairly simple program that just kind of dictates when things start and how they work. So this is the main method, public static void main string args, and then it creates a new game object, starts the says the game.welcome, and so it prints out the game welcomes people to the game, and then this is the main game loop. So while not the game has a win, so as long as there isn't a win, as long as there aren't three in a row, it executes the take a turn method, and then at the end of the game it does the game.printWinner. So what does the game class look like? It's more complicated. So in the game class we have a scanner to take in text input. We have a two-dimensional array called board to handle our board, and this is an array of strings. So the three possible things that this board can contain are a space, indicating there's no move played there yet. That's like an empty thing, so we just use a single space to indicate that it's empty. The capital letter X or the capital letter O. And we have two strings to remember the players' names. String turn to indicate whose turn it is currently, X or O. It starts out at X because X often starts in Tic Tac Toe. And then two strings to remember the player's choices temporarily as they enter them. So the methods that you're going to be using are these first four methods. Clear board, where you just use nested loops to write sort of space at each point in the array. And the array is always going to be 3 by 3, but you should write these methods in a way that's, well, never mind, I'll get to that later. And then you're going to have one method called horizontal win checker, one method called vertical win checker, and one method called diagonal win checker. And these are used in combination to check to see if there are any wins. So you need to look, and these methods will reference the player's turn and check to see if there are three of whatever turn is stored, whatever turn is in a row. Down below there's a bunch of methods that kind of just help make the game happen. So there's the constructor method for the game class. There's this print board thing which prints out the board array correctly. There's this print winner method which is used at the end of the game. Print or public welcome, so it just welcomes players to the game. This method checks if moves are valid or not, so it checks to whether or not there's a space in the place that's been requested, and then if there is a move there, it sends the player back to make a different choice. This method is the combine method. Here you combine horizontal win checker, vertical win checker, and diagonal win checker to see whether or not there are any wins in the board. This number or this method gets a number within a certain range, low and a high bound. So in our case, that's 1 to 3, 1 row, 2 row, 3 row, and so on. And it handles this by it checks for whether or not they entered a number here, and checks whether or not it's in bounds. I can explain this more if you'd like, but you can probably get a sense for it. And then finally, this is the take a turn. Oh, there's two more methods. This is the take a turn method. This is kind of one of the main methods in the game. So it prints the board, it checks whose turn it is, and then it says this. This is a do while loop, which is just a slight variation on a while loop that I can explain later. But it just prints a prompt. Please enter the number for the row and the column. And And then board, it fills in the move. This is where it fills in the move and the actual board. It writes it to the board and final writing. And then it flips the turn. It calls flip turn. And flip turn just changes it. If it's X's turn, it changes it to O. And if it's O's turn, it changes it to X. So that's how the game works, and you should try and understand the general flow of it before you start to work on the various methods.